the Dolphins freeze up in the tundra and take a beating by the Pack. Let's break down another great victory for the Packers.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah, ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early, feeling rich like I'm Kesha.
Welcome in another episode. Sounds good. Thank you to everyone for coming back and taking a listen to us. I guess Rob did not need to be scared about the warm-weathered Miami Dolphins because they are 0-8 in the cold with Tua. So just a little bit of preview for that, for the recap for what we're going to be talking about. But just know that this week we are going to have episode come out today for Tuesday for what you're hearing, and then for this recap, and then Thursday for the Packers at Lions. So just wanted to give you that. I know we're a little bit off schedule, but just wanted to kind of preface with that. So Jordan, the Packers beat down the Miami Dolphins 30-17. What was overall, it was 30-17, but it didn't ever really feel that close. I know they got a little bit better there in the second half, got a little bit more momentum, and scored there later on, but 388 yards of offense, 74 passing, 114 rushing, very efficient, no turnovers again. And then another game too with Jordan Love, he doesn't get an INT, but 274 yards, 2 TDs, 75% completion percentage, and 129.2% rating. And I think best of all, he got his turkey leg, so that's awesome. Overall, how are you feeling coming out of this game?
Man, I feel really good coming out of that week where we played the 49ers and then, the Dolphins, coming out with 2 wins. And we're not going to talk about the Niners, but that was a big week where you had 2 games in 4 days, and a week very much where you had to take care of business. So, all the things that the Packers have on the table in front of them in terms of their hopes to maybe claw back into the division, get a good playoff seed or as good as you can as a wild card team. They went out, they performed, they took care of business. They played a pretty clean game again overall. They had some penalties, but again, they were pretty limited. A couple drops. It wasn't a perfect game by any means. I give the Packers an A performance overall on the day. There were a few things that they left out on the table. I'm not too concerned about the yardage. I know that Tua had a pretty big game, 365 yards and 2 TDs passing. A lot of that came late in the game when the score was 30-11 or 27-11, right? We were up pretty heavily. And, I think it's funny. I listened to another podcast and they were talking about how Joe Barry was on the other sideline. And this was kind of a textbook version in the second half of a bend but don't break defense. We made the tremendous goal line stand late in the game to kind of, make sure that the Dolphins weren't going to mount that comeback. Went down, matched it with a score of our own to really seal the game away. And there's a lot to like from this game. Not only the offensive performance, but the defense had a great day too. 5 sacks for the defense. We had a couple players continue their upward trajectory. And Quay Walker and LVN and Isaiah McDuffie had probably maybe the best game of his career to this point. 10 tackles, 7 solo, 1 tackle for loss, a pass deflection. We had all of our star players show up and have big days. If you're counting the likes of Josh Jacobs and Tucker Kraft, Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Jordan Love, they all had great days in their own right. So I'm feeling really good, Rob. So, what do you think? You want to start talking about some of the highlights from the offense, or do you want to start with the defense?
I guess we can continue on down that train with the offense. Real quick, though, too, I want to talk about defense. Our boy Danny Whelan and Robbie Rochelle. Let's go, baby. Let's go. You know me from the preseason, I was always talking a lot about some Robbie Rochelle. He was always coming up and making some really good highlights and some good plays. And so I really got to feel good for that guy. I think he had lost, I don't know if it was a friend or whatever, that week too. I know they had mentioned he got the game ball from Matt LaFleur. So, but that was obviously critical for us, right? After that first drive to come down, when was swirling there and just a boot. And then the Lambeau Field wind gods come into our favor for the Miami Dolphins. So that was off, and that was a muff punt. But obviously, I thought Tucker Kraft, what more can you say about him? He was the highest graded offensive player too, I believe, out of PFF for this game. He just continues to want to put, go through a mother trucker's face. Yes, I did say mother trucker. I'm trying not to swear on this podcast. But
that plays into the Tucker Kraft, trucker, Tucker.
All the puns intended though. Yes. So I was obviously, we know how you feel about him too, Jordan. He's such a really good and talented football player. I am really curious to see actually what happens like when you get Luke Musgrave back and how they're going to ease him in and that sort of stuff too. But Tucker Kraft is 10-1 for this team. He was doing amazing. You got to love the running too from Josh Jacobs, of course. I feel like I've said this the last, how many ever weeks, but I don't know if it's Robert Saleh or if it's Matt LaFleur or the combination of both, or maybe it's wintertime or whatever it is. They realize they got Josh Jacobs and they can use that workhorse, but they have turned Matt into, I'm going to run the ball first creatively, Matt LaFleur, pretty consistently. So I'm not sure if that's a spinoff of what Robert Saleh is trying to do with this offense, but it just seems to be working because they came out on fire. We're able to utilize a lot of play action, obviously dump offs to the tight end, to Josh Jacobs. I know Christian Watson had a big day.
Mm-hmm.
Dante Tavian.
Yes.
Where?
You got it. The
I
streak
noticed
ends.
that. Yes. How many
ends
times
today?
Yes. You're welcome. He had that big almost whoopsie drop there too, where he tries to body catch it. And then it pops up, and I would almost should have been an interception if it weren't for Christian Watson, quite honestly. But, he was able to bounce back and actually make a couple of really good catches for this offense, too, on some drives, too. So I was extraordinarily happy. They were able to, again, move the ball in the second half. They didn't have the touchdowns to show for it. They had some more field goals. But, whether it was a check down, how many times did Jordan Love utilize his check downs, and Tucker Kraft or even Josh Jacobs or to out to the flat to a Jade Reed for, what was it, one of the touchdowns, just making a guy or two miss. Josh Jacobs on that one where he's in the flat and he's in the middle of the field and he jukes the guy right and goes left, goes down for, was it almost 50 yards or what it was? Man, just
like 40 yards, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I've been noticing that time and time again. I'm like, check it down. He checks it down, makes a guy miss. And it's just playing really efficiently. So I was really pleased with what the offense came with today.
Yeah, and I think it's starting to look like the Jordan Love of the second half of last season, where he's not forcing things and he's taking what's available to him and he's putting the ball in the hands of his playmakers. And all the guys that you just mentioned, they made plays.
Yeah.
And Josh Jacobs didn't have an overall super efficient day rushing the ball. But, man, you throw that 40-yard reception in there and a couple of other passes that he got. He ended up with 117 all-purpose yards and a TD. And, for all the, we've never been critical of Josh Jacobs really on this show, but I know that there's other media podcasters out there that a little earlier in the season were like, well, we're not really seeing the Josh Jacobs we expected. I mean, I don't know what else you expected, because every game now you can pretty much just check mark that he's going to have at least 100 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. And, I think that's what we can expect from Josh Jacobs moving forward. And, I didn't, like I said in the last episode, the preview, I didn't have any statistics or any big thing that was going to lead me to believe that Tucker Kraft was going to have a huge day. I just felt it within my gut. And, man, he went out and he balled out too. We'll see on Thursday if my prediction for who I think is going to go off this week against the Lions comes true. So tune in on Thursday. Yeah. Tune in on Thursday to figure that one out. But another interesting day for Jayden Reed, and he gets in the end zone twice. He didn't have a huge day from a yardage standpoint or a touch standpoint, but he made the most of his opportunities, and he could have even had more. The one bad throw of the day was really the Jordan Love, kind of gross overthrow as he's escaping the pocket and kind of running forward and overthrows Jayden Reed by quite a bit. But if he would have popped him for that pass, I think that would have been another 40, 50 yards, possibly a touchdown right there on that play. And then, Reed would have had 100 all-purpose yards on the day, and you'd look at his game a little bit differently. What do you make of Jayden Reed right now, Rob? Because, I don't know, have teams figured out how to cover him up downfield, because he seems that he's been most effective the last couple of weeks when he's been doing exactly what we've been talking about, kind of checking down, handing the ball off to him and kind of making guys miss in open space.
Yeah,
Have teams figured him out, how to cover him, or what do you make of that?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I know they haven't had quite as much success on some, deeper type of shots to him. It's been really close, no doubt, as far as that stuff goes. But, he's very elusive in the flat or with checkdowns, or you get him in the middle of the field. He's very good with yak or yards after catch. He can make a guy miss, and I mean, he did it in this game. On that first touchdown, he just straight up beat him, and Jordan Love puts a dime on him on that third goal pass, too. So that was like, by the hair of your chinny chin chin, he just kind of outruns him. But that second one that he ends up getting, where he's out in the flat, I almost thought there for a second Christian Watson was going to get penalized for blocking that one guy, but it looked like he kept his hands just barely enough off of him. But that's, they're flag happy. But then again, too, makes another guy miss out on the outside and then cuts it right back on the inside and scores. So, that's fine. If that's where he's best utilized, that's good too. I think they're still going to try and take some shots with him, more toward the mid deep, and then maybe some deeper shots. They just haven't had as much success with it. You have Christian Watson, who's back, who can really stretch the field. You got Bo Melton, who's a stretcher as well. You got Dontavian Wicks, who can basically do your all and line up anywhere. So they're kind of utilizing him, kind of like a chess piece too as well, and giving Jordan Love some more check down options, middle of the different reads through his progression too. So I'm liking what they're doing. I think that they're going to continue to try to utilize him in different ways, but if this is what they're doing and they're getting success out of it, why stop if it's not, if it's continuing to work?
Yeah, and really two pretty bad overthrows by Jordan Love. There was the one in the Texans game, too, that could have been like a 40, 50-yard reception, and if he would have...
And he barely missed that.
And, if he would have come down with that pass and the one from this game, if Jordan could have put it on him, he might be nearly at 900 yards receiving on the season already at this point in time and approaching that golden threshold of 1,000 yards receiving for the season. He's close to 700 yards right now, so I still think that with 5 games to go, he has an outside shot of getting to that mark. But we talked about this early in the season, who's wide receiver one. We all kind of anointed Jaden Reed early on, but I think it just goes to show that it's going to be a different guy every week. And Christian Watson, credit to him, because you talked about the block that maybe could have been a penalty. We were kind of holding our breath there. The man gets out and does the dirty work, and really impressed. Really impressed with Watson this week, that despite the big drop that he had against the Niners, that he kind of regained his confidence and made 2 great catches down the field.
Yeah, for sure. And he talked about the blocking, though, too. And, those goal line plays, they're having Wicks come in, we're right behind the left guard, the right guard sometimes. I'm like, the guy might need to work on actually catching the football, but man, they trust in a tall, skinny wide receiver, to go out there and make some of those blocks, but he's doing it, and he's putting a lot of effort out there. So obviously the team's got a lot of confidence in him and being able to do that. And obviously to boot helps him to catch the ball, but I thought that was pretty cool to see too. I'm like, is that Wicks? Yeah, it was. So,
hey, one more just bullet point for Christian Watson really quick. Man, Jordan Love could have had an interception on the day if he didn't do a phenomenal job of breaking up that pass that went off the hands of Dontavian Wicks again early in this game. And I think that play will go down as a very underrated play in this game, but a huge play in this game to keep the ball in the hands of the Packers. And I think, if my memory serves me right, this game happened a few days ago now, and I feel like my mind has been all over the place, but they went down and they scored on that drive, I believe.
Yep.
So switching over to the defense, it's really bad to say, but really happy to say, Kenny Clark came away with his first sack of the season this week. Let's go, Kenny. A guy who's getting paid that kind of money and has had the career that Kenny's had. There's been a lot of criticism, and I still think plenty to be had, because it is his first sack of the season, and last year he pretty much came off a career year leading to the extension that he got. But I really hope that momentum can continue for him down the stretch, because if it does, that's going to be a huge difference maker for us.
Yeah, there's players that are coming out of hibernation. It's wintertime, you should be hibernating, but they're coming out of hibernation, baby. Kenny Clark, Lucas Van Ness, again in this game too, where we didn't see it all. Now granted, it wasn't the whole game. There wasn't consistent, right? There's still a lot of rawness to him, but you're starting to see a lot more flashes, right? So that too, and what was he, the highest graded or second highest graded person? You chatted about this more than a couple times on a few different pods ago. Our speedster Aaron Mosby putting up a really good PFF number and really good day for the Packers. Again, Quay Walker, what did we say? He doesn't have to grade in the 90s and the high 80s every single time. Quietly was 6th or 7th on the PFF for top defense with a 68 grade when most of the year he was in the 30s, 40s, and low 50s.
Yeah, let's go. I mean, he had 10 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, and a QB hit on the day.
And a massive, massive sack there at that goal line stand that that really shifted that momentum back. That was absolutely amazing. So I got a question to ask you, Jordan. What is this? Is this finally like the light bulb after, what is it, 3.5 years? Like finally
2.5 years.
2.5 years, excuse me. Like finally going off for him? Or do you feel like he's just focused more, practicing better, Halfley's getting to him? Or is this just you're getting a lucky couple of flashes in the pan?
I'm going to be honest, I don't know what to make of it quite yet. And the reason behind it, I'm just thankful for it at this moment and hoping that it continues.
Yep.
It's probably honestly a combination of a lot of things, right? I think he's playing in a new defense. Obviously, the conversion to Halfley from the Joe Barry defense. You've kind of always heard rumblings that when Quay has to think too much and he doesn't really use his instincts, that impacts his ability on the field. And maybe we're 3/4 of the way into the season now, and he's starting to feel comfortable enough where he's having to think less. Xavier McKinney talked about trying to take some of that mental load off him and start to get some of that communication to some of the other guys on defense. So maybe that's been making an impact, and maybe
keep doing it.
McKinney, whatever they're doing right now, and I'm going to go 3 ways there. Because maybe the coaching staff and Aaron Campanelli and Halfley, maybe they're just figuring out, hey, if we want Quay to be the athlete and the playmaker that we know that he's capable of being, that we need to make some adjustments for it. So I think that's going to play out over the next, the remainder of this season. And if he can continue to play at this level, our conversations around who Quay Walker is and what the future of Quay Walker is going to be with the Packers is going to change tremendously. I still don't think it would be wise at this point in time for us to pick up his 5th-year option and make him prove that consistently again next season, and then let's take our chances on re-signing him if he is that key player in the middle of our defense. But I'm just very thankful that we're seeing this version of Quay Walker versus the one we saw in the first 8, 9, 10 weeks of the season.
But if he's a cog and is just a tear down middle Mike linebacker and runs us all the way to the Super Bowl and gets us the Super Bowl victory, okay, we can pick up his 5th option.
Well, we've got some time to figure out, and the Packers have some time to figure out if they're going to exercise that or not. I know they have 2 big decisions with both Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt about their 5th-year options coming at the end of this season. So
switching up a little bit too then for this, and I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this as well, because on the last pod, I talked quite lengthy at just the I know it was going to be cold, right? We know that there with the Dolphins, they're probably going to live with that like forever and infinity now, especially if they're saying it's not a big deal. I'm looking forward to beating that narrative. Well, no, you're not. I was pretty scared as far as the speed goes of the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I know we haven't talked about John O. Smith yet. That has been a terror and a nightmare for the Packers defenses. Insert any athletic tight end. It just kills us. But no teams are seeming to, even with Tyreek Hill, and that man is fast on a cold field or not, throw deep on us, and that is because of our highest graded guy here at top 5 on defense, and Xavier McKinney. You know, he didn't have a pick in this game, but obviously he graded out at a 78.0 on PFF. He talked a little bit about it too, and the pressers that, you know, teams are having to dink and dunk and dink and dunk and dink and dunk. You can do that, but eventually you're going to have to take shots, and teams aren't taking shots. And I was surprised. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan. I didn't remember seeing one big, deep shot. Teams aren't taking shots on the Packers, whether you have a ton of speed or not. And I think that's because of Xavier McKinney in that back end there.
Well, and there's been a few games, but for the most part, the Packers have done a great job of neutralizing the other team's wide receivers this year. I mean, guys have had some fair days against the Packers. You know, even St. Brown, which is a monster, I think only had like 58 yards receiving when they played the Packers. You know, obviously we talked about these two guys, Waddle and Hill, and late in the half, they got some passes underneath the middle, and they're good once they get the ball in their hands, right? But they did not let them beat the Packers. You know, they did not let the Dolphins beat the Packers over the top. And I think that's a theme that we're going to continue to see.
Yep.
The team's wide receiver threats just don't have huge days against us. And maybe that's just the theory. Maybe that's why the tight ends are having big games. Is that
they'll go somewhere with the ball.
We'll take our chances on making a tight end beat us, because typically they're not the most athletic playmaker on the field. So let them have 15 yards here, 15 yards there, 10 yards there, because they're usually not big yards after the catch guy. There's not a lot of Tucker Krafts and, you know, Travis Kelce's in their primes where they're going to make a bunch of guys miss. So we'll talk about this more on our Lions pod, but you know, Sam Laporta, we'll see how he fares against this Packers defense next week.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure he's going to get his, because it seems like just about every tight end. But just to what you were alluding to, that really is the Packers' MO on defense, because obviously there's going to be soft spots in your scheme, no matter if you're playing zone or if man, you'll be man to man. But yeah, I'm totally in agreement with that, and that would allude to as well too here, even without Ja, you know, Keyshawn Nixon again. Another really good grade here on defense at 73.5. And guess who we have in the top 5 too as well, Jordan? Eric Stokes. Good day for a couple of those cornerbacks who, at least Eric Stokes, Keyshawn Nixon lately here, at least the last couple games, has been grading out pretty good. But Eric Stokes, I feel like this is one of the first times, it might be the first time, him popping up on this report. Really good day to have a solid day against some of those really talented wide receivers.
And I don't know what to make of that, and clearly the Packers don't know what to make of that either, because, you know, now we've had 2 games in a row where snaps have been pretty much 50-50 split again between Stokes and Valentine, and clearly Stokes had a good game here this week. I don't know, maybe that's just Matt LaFleur seems to have one spot on his team where he rotates guys pretty consistently all the way through the season, and I guess that cornerback spot that right now is being occupied by Valentine and Stokes is this year's flavor. I don't know if it's situationally they're putting guys out there. I don't know if it's they're evaluating the future of that position and are still trying to give a guy who was a first-round selection an opportunity to prove that he's the guy they thought they were when they selected him. That's probably... Goody's getting a lot of love right now, and I love the team that Goody's put together, but I think he's fixed his 3rd-round draft curse with selecting Sean Ryan and Tucker Kraft, and now people are pointing the fingers at this guy can't nail down a 1st-round pick, and if he does nail one down like Ja, he's hurt 50% of the time, so there's a lot of criticism there. And I'd be willing to bet that they're trying to wait as long as possible to see if the investment they made in those guys is going to show up for them.
Yeah, and so totally agree. One last thing I wanted to emphasize here too for the defense, and this is at least the 2nd week in a row, held the Dolphins to 39 rush yards, to where in the pod before when we were previewing this, that was the one thing I told you that really scared me. as a person who does have Devon Achane on his fantasy football team. He's been a consistently very good running back. He did end up scoring in this game, but overall, the totality, and especially what they did for the Niners as well, granted they had a backup quarterback, they had some injuries, yada, 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 excuses. Still the second week in a row where we've held a really, really good rushing attack to not very much, which marries up with really good with what they're trying to do in the secondary and then not letting the top go off on the defense. So is it just me? Is this defense really rounding into form? It feels like after that Bears game, that was a pretty tough game. They've had a couple really solid games against the rushing attack here.
It seems like a winning formula to me because you're taking two of the biggest Achilles heels, or two of the biggest ways that teams score away from them. And, the Packers rush defense has been their Achilles heel forever that we've talked about it. So now we're taking that away and teams aren't throwing deep. And I think that we'll live with the 15-yard passes over the middle to tight ends. Like you said, the ball's got to go somewhere. But yeah, I was just super impressed with that. And, you talked about the Foreigners. Is Christian McCaffrey you're talking about, the best in the game. And I know he's just getting healthy off of his injury, but I for sure thought that Mike McDaniel was going to try to run the ball heavily in this game because it was cold and you had the whole Tua narrative and you've got Achane, you've got Mostert. They didn't really utilize Jalen Wright, their third back, at all. But they didn't even really get an opportunity to. We got out way ahead, and part of that's the game script too. We got out way ahead, and we really forced them to try to pass the ball to get back into this game. So
yeah, I hopeful we can keep it up because coming up next, I feel is the two-headed snake. And David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So, and what is a phenomenal offensive line. So we're really going to need to play up the step if we're going to have a solid day against those guys and stopping that rushing attack. So,
all right, Rob, hit me with the line.
Here we go.
All right, so our look around the league. Most of our avid NFL fans know these results already, but just recapping for anybody that stays up to date on this pod, the Lions edge out the Bears on Thanksgiving Day. A performance where the Bears rallied. They came back from a 16-0 deficit, but ultimately some mismanagement, whether you want to point that at Eberflus, he lost his job, Caleb Williams being a rookie, whatever. They couldn't get the job done to try to tie the game and push that into overtime. So the Lions escaped the Bears on Thanksgiving Day. The Vikings, and not to be redundant with the word, but they truthfully did escape the Cardinals today. The Vikings had their biggest comeback since, and when I say today, we're recording this on Sunday, you're listening to it on Tuesday, right? But they escaped the Cardinals with their biggest comeback since the 2022 game they had against the... So, I don't know. I'm so sick of the Vikings winning, but they keep finding a way to win these close games where they don't really look impressive throughout. I like our chances against them later in the season. The Seahawks beat the Jets to keep their divisional lead. They scored 19 straight points to win. The Eagles win a heavyweight matchup against the Ravens in a big Sunday afternoon showdown. A couple other notes, the Bucs beat the Panthers in OT. That eventually might have some playoff implications. Commanders win big over the Titans. The Steelers continue their winning ways, finally like in a high-scoring affair, though. I think that game was like 44-38, so it wasn't the 19-18 win we've become accustomed to see the Steelers performing the last few weeks. The Chargers beat the Falcons, but I think right now they maintain their divisional lead at 6-6. And the Saints beat the Rams to keep their playoff hopes alive. So looking at the playoff picture, the Lions are the 1 seed at 11-1. Eagles are the 2 seed at 10-2. Seahawks are 7-5. The Falcons are 6-6. So those would be your 4 divisional winners. The Vikings are still holding the 5 seed at 10-2. The Packers, the 6 seed at 9-3, and the Commanders holding that 7 seed at 8-5. So the playoff picture hasn't changed much in the last couple weeks. Right now, these seem like the teams that are playing. I think really the biggest spots that are up for grabs are who's going to win the NFC West and who's going to win the NFC South. So, well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. We have more great Packers content. Next week, we'll be back to our regular cycle of having episodes come out on Wednesdays and Saturdays. We want to thank you for listening. Please make Make sure to share the good word with any other Packers fans, friends. If you're watching on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, whatever's appropriate for that platform. We truly appreciate it. And as always, you can connect with us on X. Rob's new handle is Sounds Gouda with 3 A's. You can always connect with me at Olson Jord. But until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Go Pack.
Go Pack.
Been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.